Okay, everybody. Quiet down. We are now convened for our second expanded budget committee meeting of this 2024 budget process. And that's all I have to say about that. So I will turn it over to Lisa and Norma to introduce our department and agency guests.
Thank you. First up this evening, we have Roxanne with the airport.
Okay, and for you who are following along in our paper book, that will be on page 4-2.
Okay, is everybody ready for me?
Yes, we are, Roxanne.
All
Nice
right,
to see you.
wonderful. Well, good afternoon. The airport does have an OTR this year, so therefore that's why you get to see my smiling, happy face this afternoon. Norma was going to pull up the OTR sheet for the presentation. If she could do that, that would be great. It's just the one slide, but I can kind of go through a quick little bit of information. So the airline and airport industry, as you can tell, is still going through a great deal, which started back in March of 2020 with COVID. It's taking longer to rebuild and recover than we anticipated. But as many of you know, it's not just the transportation industry, it's multiple industries that are going through this. Many regional airports are still experiencing a shortage of pilots. Cost of fuel is still an issue. As you know, we lost American Airlines in 2022. So this factored into fewer flights at that time than we have now even on our current carriers, Delta and United, which put a large hole in the airport budget overall. In 2023, I asked for assistance via an OTR to help the airport work through this difficult time and begin the road to recovery. We asked for and received, thanks to all of you, have 50% of the airport terminal debt service was covered with county funds, as well as 1.3 million, just over that, to help maintain a competitive fee airport and cover our operating expenses and keep us operational. This allowed us to keep our rates and charges at a competitive rate. And again, I appreciate all of you for the support last year. To continue on this path of recovery, we're again asking for an OTR in 2024 budget. We're asking for 50% of the terminal debt service payment, which is $340,000, as well as $800,000 to help offset our operating expenses in the budget and to continue to remain competitive. This will allow us to keep our rates and charges within a reasonable amount. And I think moving forward, as we're continuing to do this, working hard to keep this going, this will help tremendously and continue to maintain a competitive airport and keep the economic support through the community. As part of the assistance, also the county last year supported us by giving us funds to do a strategic and business recovery plan. I want to report we've received 4 responses to the proposal. They're being reviewed at this time. We had 4 great ones, and going through them and just trying to make sure we get what we're looking for out of that. The hope is the committee that's reviewing them, we should have an answer in time for the October F&I meeting, and I'll bring a resolution to award to a company then to help us continue to build and grow. It'll give us additional opportunities, see what they have to offer, what we can do. Again, in 2025, we'll be asking for probably another OTR, much smaller, but just to continue to try to move forward. But we'll know more about that as we get into the strategic plan. Again, this is the second time Ithaca's had to come to the county for assistance. And trust me, it's not an easy feat that I take lightly. I understand all the legislators are put in a tough spot every year. And I realize the pandemic has affected a lot of businesses, so I appreciate all of your continued support. I'm here to answer any questions at any time. If you have any ideas or whatever, reach out. But again, that's my OTR and kind of what we're looking for at the airport.
Thank you, Roxanne. Does anybody have questions or comments? Mike Lane.
Good afternoon, Roxanne.
Good afternoon.
Are you aware of what other municipalities for the other airports in the region are putting into those airports on a regular basis?
It just really depends. Binghamton has always had a supplement from the county, sometimes, $1 million or above. They also have the ability to use for their LEO, which law enforcement officers coverage, they're able to use the security that they have, so they're not having to pay that. So we're experiencing some reduced funded mandates here that we're having to fund. So that's, additional expenses we have to do as well. And I'm not sure for Elmira, I've never been able to get a good figure from Elmira on what they factor in, but I do know that they put funds into the airport. I'm just not sure what they are.
Thanks. I had one other question. County Administrator has red flagged the customs facility operation in her proposed budget presentation this year. We had a discussion about that at the F&I committee with the FBO operator, and I wonder if you wanted to make any comments about that.
Sure. I think the customs facility, I know it's a strain and it looks as a negative impact on an operating budget. I'm a numbers person and I see that. I also believe it does give economic benefit to the community. Currently, we've been having companies use it for cargo, which has increased the usage. We have recently started a marketing campaign to try to get other companies to use it, to other people coming in so that they can clear through customs here, which helps Teganic tremendously. There's other opportunities that I would like to look at over the next year if it is approved, to keep the customs facility. I think we can make it even more sustainable. I think it's something that we have to work hard to do, but I'm willing to put the effort in, and I think the community is. I think Teganic Aviation is. They're a great partner. We worked really hard with them over the last year, and I have a great relationship with Mike Horan, who is here, and I think, we can work hard and get that to be a more sustainable part of the airport and other opportunities for funding it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I have Amanda, Randy, and Shauna.
Thanks. I have two questions, and I'm looking at the operating budget page list. And I have a question that I'm pretty sure I ask every single year, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Because on the premium pay line, the actual is significantly higher than what was budgeted. So I'm wondering what premium pay is again for the 6th year in a row.
You want me to answer it, Roxanne?
That would be great, Norma, because it's something that happens in finance and how
Yeah, it's
paid out.
unfortunately, it's the way the overtime gets calculated in the actuals. So we budgeted we budget the halftime overtime, but when the payroll gets actually posted to finance, it posts both straight time and halftime into the premium line, rather than only the halftime. It truly is an
accounting.
It's an accounting thing, yeah.
Okay.
And so that might explain why the salary and wages that were budgeted are quite a bit higher than the actuals. So it's just a matter of how, for bookkeeping purposes, we divide those up, I gather.
Yeah, it's the way that, it's a systems issue. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's changed off and on, like we used to budget halftime separately, then we budgeted it together, and then, so it's going back and forth, so it's just kind of balancing it at the end of the year, makes it work.
Okay, thank you. I'm writing it down, and I will not ask
You
it
can ask next year.
And you'll have lost it by next year.
Okay, my second question,
Yes.
though, is farther down, also on the operating expense, under program expense, the target negative $1,034,000. Wondering if that is a negative and what that means.
So in the program expense, so this is something that Norma and I came up with last year, and I think this year as well, and how to show the OTR in our budget, because we can't, so it's also, it's covering, it's revenue coming in, but it doesn't attach to like one specific line item for the expenses. So that's where, I think Norma, correct me if I'm wrong, you had negative out the OTR in the program expense line. Is that correct?
That is, yes, that is correct. We had to, again, this is another accounting thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so just,
Just ignore those accounting things.
okay.
No, it is an odd thing because the A fund is feeding a different fund. And so the money is coming into their expenses in multiple lines. And I could have made the adjustment to multiple lines, maybe I should have. But because it's, when it transfers over to the financial system, that's going to go away because it's really, the money comes out of the A fund, it feeds this CT fund that is what generates the airport's enterprise funds.
Okay,
And, yep,
I believe you.
okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Yes, hello, Roxanne. I realize a lot of this is out of your control, but so don't take it bad. Do we pay the same rates for airports to land here as they pay at other airports? Or I know PFC's work, but do the airlines have to pay a landing fee or anything like that?
Correct. So the airlines pay a landing fee based on our budget, really. What they do is we calculate what our expenses are going to be for the year, estimate, what we're going to have for utilities, for payroll, all of that. Then I calculate what the non-airline revenue is from our non-airline tenants. Factor that in. Then the information, and then I also do an estimate on another sheet of what I anticipate our landed weight to be for the year based on our current flight schedule. So it's based on per thousand maximum gross landing weight pounds. So this is probably a longer explanation than what you need. So then that's all factored together. We send it off to our consultant, Recondo. They determine what is needed based on our 4 cost centers to cover. So the airfield is where the landing fee comes in. So they base that on what we need to cover the balance on the airfield, adjust the landing fee based on the total landed weight of what it would cost for them to land. Then we look at the terminal rental, same way.
Okay. Are those fees comparable to other airports in the area? Or?
Ours are a little bit higher. We worked really hard to get them down. And again, it just really depends on our non-airline revenue as well and increased flights, larger aircraft, which we're happy with. I'll just throw this in as a side note. In the past, I've done a quick calculation over the past 2 weeks. Our load factors, knock on wood, are doing amazing. We're in the 80 and 90 percentile for all of 4 of our flights over the last beginning of September until today, this morning. We have 126 seats available in the morning on the 2 aircraft. And some days we're at the maximum of 126 people getting on those aircraft. A lot of times it's 100, 110. So our passengers are increasing. We have meetings coming up with Delta and United to share this information. And they're extremely happy with how that's going. So hope it continues on.
Thank you.
Yep.
Shauna?
So I continue to struggle with the funding of our customs department. And I know that we've invested a lot of money. I know that the federal government has invested a lot of money, but I find it really hard to justify us being in the red $221,000 per year. And that being on the backs of many of our taxpayers who can't afford to fly out of our local airport. I know that initially, whenever we voted to do the renovations of the airport and then move on to build the customs, there were many partners in that conversation, many stakeholders. And right now, we have relied on the stakeholders to use this service. And unfortunately, either they're not using it or they're using it and they're not paying their fair amount. So in the future, for one, I would like to know if legally we are able to close it. I think that's going to be an important question over the next few weeks as we look at our budget. But if we're not able to close it, then I would ask that the people that are actually using that customs are going to be paying for it. Because it's not fair to our taxpayers to have the burden of people flying in and out of our customs if they're not going to be using it.
I understand, Shauna, and I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. I fully get it, and I get too that I'm a numbers person. I see that, and I just cringe. I think we can make it successful, but I think we have to look at many opportunities, and I'm also hopeful that the strategic and business plan too can help us with that. But I think that's on one of the top things on my list is to really delve into that and figure out what we can do to make it successful, how we can make it successful, or what our opportunities are. I appreciate your comments, I do.
Okay, anyone else? Because I have a couple of questions. Roxanne, you mentioned earlier in response to someone else's question, reduced funded mandates. What are those? Who mandated them, and what are they costing?
The TSA, so we have to have law enforcement officers at the checkpoint during flight times. And thankfully, I mean, we've worked great with the sheriff. They've, tried every opportunity to keep our costs low. But we are expending roughly $270,000 a year for the LEO coverage. And I believe we're down to like 50-some thousand that the TSA is reimbursing, and I think it might even be less. And they just send us an updated agreement and say, this is what we're paying you, and then they pay it $20 an hour for hours that the checkpoint's open. So of course I respond with, well, why don't we keep the checkpoint open all day? And that didn't fly, but I tried. So that's just something, covering the cost for that. Initially when 9/11 happened and TSA was created, it was 100% covered. They covered the full cost of that mandate, and slowly it's been reduced year after year.
Thank you. And then my other question is, you mentioned there's landing fees. We know that there are PFCs. Where in these revenue lines does that show up? Because there's local revenues, other revenues.
Let me see. So it might be, I'm trying to pull out the same sheets you have. So I look at something different when I do. So money from the airlines will show up in the rental line, and
I don't see a rental line under revenues.
It'll be local.
It'll be under local.
That's local,
So in
okay.
there, yep, will be landing fees, terminal rental, as well as general aviation revenue. That'll factor in there from like our T-hangar tenants, Teganic Aviation, rental cars. They pay us commissions and rent. We have a great new agreement with them. We've worked a better, RFP with them from last year, so that's a better revenue source for us. So those are all factored into there.
Okay, and then there's an entry for other revenues budgeted at target of 62,794. What is that?
That is, let me look on my other sheet.
Where do the PFCs show up, I guess is my question.
The PFCs aren't in here, Deborah. They're separate completely in a whole separate budgeting sector that it's part of the federal regulations. They have to be completely separate. So the PFCs have their own account.
Because
And
they're
actually
allocated to specific purposes, right? Okay.
Correct.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
The 62, I don't have that broken out on my revenue sheet either. I'd have to look and see. That actually might be from the TSA, what they pay us for the LEO, and another funding from a small revenue fund. I don't have it listed, but I bet you that's probably part of it from the TSA reimbursement, I think.
Okay, thank you. That's
Yep.
very helpful. Randy, you have another question?
Yes, I do. Roxanne, right now, there's 4 flights that leave the airport every day?
Correct, yep.
And so there's 4 flights coming in as well, so, correct.
Yep.
So what times a day are they?
So we have 2 departing early in the morning, one at like 5:19 a.m. and one shortly thereafter. So 2 early departures and then 2 midday departures, and then arrivals come in between them and after. So the arrivals from JFK and United are later in the evening and mid-afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for your attention. Thank you, Roxanne, for all this information. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions, please feel free to reach out at any time.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so next up, we have the Human Services Coalition. There are 2 entries in your book for that. They're at 5-10 and 5-19. One is just for the Human Services Coalition's administrative budget, and then the other ones are for the supported agencies. And I see you all are wondering, where on earth are we going to sit? I think they want to sit together, don't they? Okay. Yeah, now you can signal each other across the Great Divide. Okay, take it away.
Hey, is this on? Is this thing on?
It's
About
on.
6
Okay,
inches away.
great. Great. Thank you, everybody, for having us here. I'm Cindy Wilcox, the Executive Director of the Human Services Coalition. And this is John Mazzello, the Deputy Director of HSC. And are you all okay if we start with HSC? It's just a lot easier and
That's
quicker.
wherever you
Great.
want to start, that's just fine, thanks.
All right, super. Okay. I guess I can do the next slide, please, thing. All right, beautiful. Thanks, John. Just as a quick kind of giving you context for the budget situation here, just to remind some of you, and some of you are a little newer, who the Human Services Coalition is. I describe us as the go-to agency for the not-for-profit community. We basically have 3 categories of programs and services. We have human services planning, where we do capacity building, leadership development, our continuum of care, which is homeless response. We do a lot of planning and convening. We also have the Health Planning Council, which is a network of many health-related agencies that meet monthly to, collaborate and with a focus on health equity. We promote collaboration and cooperation among the healthcare providers. And then we, of course, we have 211, information and referral, and, pick up the phone, call 211. And a fun fact about 211, I would say, well, John can probably tell you, the percentage of individuals versus providers that we support. This isn't like 70-30 or something.
Yeah, it's mostly individuals. We do get a good number of providers, whether they're from county departments or other not-for-profits.
Right. So major influences. So kind of what we've been focused on over the last year or so is around kind of building not-for-profit sector capacity. Coming out of COVID, things were a little decimated, so we've really been trying to build up the capacity of the agencies in the sector. And also housing, that's always been a focus. Obviously, it's a very kind of public focus at the moment, and we're working hard with our network of 30-plus providers that work with in the homeless and housing space. One of our big wins, of course, was the youth homelessness demonstration project that we started a pilot in 2021, which was $1 million infused into our homeless and housing response system for youth has now been incorporated as a permanent piece of the base for our continuum of care funding. So that will come to us annually now going forward. So that's pretty great. We've been doing a lot of work in 211 on transportation across the county, including the MAS program, which stands for
Mobility as a Service.
Mobility as a Service. We work very closely with the county on that. So that's exciting news in transportation. And we're really excited about our new partnership with Cayuga Health Systems. We are working with Cayuga Health to kind of bring together much more intentionally through a health equity lens the clinical and the human services side of health. So some of you may have heard about social determinants of health or social care needs. We are really kind of at the cutting edge of this type of work, I think, in New York State, and we're very excited about that partnership. Okay, so we have 2 over-target requests. The first one is for our housing specialist. And this is the 3rd year of a multi-year, one-time OTR. So we it was first approved in 2022. And this role at HSC is very critical in our capacity around housing, our housing initiatives and our housing department. The housing specialist spends about 1/3 of their time on the coordinated entry process, which is basically directly serving people experiencing literal homelessness. It's a database that accepts people into the database and then works with all the providers to find folks housing. They also manage a lot of the data and the information around COC and housing. They provide all the orientation for new coordinated entry users and orientation to folks new to the continuum of care. They do a lot of planning around the point in time count, all the kind of workings of the COC. And they also kind of free up our director of housing initiatives to do things like bring in an additional $1 million in homeless funding for youth. So this has been a real great, valuable, important position for us. So we definitely are pleased that Lisa's recommending it. Do you want me to go through the second one before questions, or you want to ask questions about the housing specialist?
Does anyone have a question so far? I think you can go on.
Okay, great. And then the second OTR is for the data specialist. Same thing, 3rd year of a multi-year. This position primarily supports 211, information referral. As you know, 211 has a lot of data in it. We get about over 20,000 calls a year, and we have about 2,000 agency records in our database. So this data specialist helps us manage all of that and helps us actually kind of do some analytics around that data so that we can understand the needs in the community better. Actually, before the legislature approved this, we were the only 211 center in the whole state without a dedicated database manager. So this has really made a great impact on our programming. And they also, actually, the data specialist supports all of our programming, it's not just 211.
Any questions on that? Greg?
Yeah, since this is a 3rd year of a 3-year OTR, what's your thoughts for next year? Or, I mean, it seems like these positions are critical to your operation, or at least make the work of others, broader, and they're able to accomplish more because of these folks. Sorry, not because of folks, because of the positions. What are sort of your plans or thoughts for future years?
Well, these two positions definitely have supported the sector as a whole. And it would be my desire that these two positions will continue to be supported by the county going forward. The housing specialist actually has another, funding source, but the data specialist is fully funded by the county.
And can I ask a follow-up? Thank you. And with the housing specialist, the continuation of that support, is that, do you foresee that being possible in years to come? Is that something you need to apply for every 3 years, or?
Yes, we actually have to apply for it every 2 years.
Every 2 years, okay.
Yes, and that's a good question. That is, it's funding through a foundation, so it's not as sustainable.
What kind of gap would that create if that funding were not available?
It would be, let's see, we get, the foundation funds $35,000 per year, and it's a 2-year grant. So it would be a gap of $35,000 plus any COLA adjustments.
Thank you. Rich John?
Thanks. Are there any cost savings that have accrued because of having the data specialists that you can point to? Thanks.
For HSC or for the sector? Or either one?
Either.
Both.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So one of the things that Cindy didn't mention, but we talked about last fall, was the ability with the data specialist to bring in-house some of the reports and data work that we had previously contracted out to others. So for example, the salary and benefit survey that HSC does for the sector overall was really valuable for us to be able to bring that in-house. It allowed us to be much more responsive to the needs of the community. We made a lot of changes based on feedback we had received during the COVID period to that, which would have been a little bit more challenging to do with an external consultant. We're also looking to be able to use the data specialist as a tool in our other half, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, with the review of agencies seeking county funding, to be able to work with them to strengthen their ability to either use or collect the data they have, or to understand it. And that one I think will be particularly beneficial. We're just starting with that now, but particularly beneficial because we've seen that for some of these agencies, especially the smaller ones, or the ones that have a little bit more, a little bit less capacity, I should say, a little less capacity, they're really spending their energies on the service delivery. And sometimes we see the opportunities for them to improve their data collection, or to understand who they're serving, or to really understand the impact that they're having, either for their own grants or for just to improve their programs. So we really see that as an opportunity to move forward with this position, to be able to support the sector as a whole, save them from having to find outside consultants who are quite expensive in the data or evaluation framework, and be able to provide them with some basic supports to help them move forward.
And I think for the housing specialist position, not necessarily cost savings, but definitely it has enabled our Director of Housing Initiatives to, it freed her up to find more resources, which she is doing. We call her the rainmaker in the office. She works very hard to identify other opportunities to bring in grant funding, at all levels. And also, she's also freed up to do similar things like technical assistance to the other providers. So, for example, I know that she consulted with TC Action on a grant that they just received, a very significant size. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but our housing director was able to really consult with her and kind of help her through that, so that could come to fruition. So it really brings in more money to the community, not necessarily cost savings, but definitely revenue generation.
Okay, I have Annie and then Randy.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Two questions. First one, real quick. I'm assuming the Human Services Coalition Housing Specialist works with our housing specialist at the county?
Yep.
Okay. And then the second one's possibly a little harder. So for the local food systems plan, do you see, just looking at all the different services and umbrellas that you help people with, to me, it seems, that food is an integral part of that. Do you see in the future that is something that an agency that you might be able to help in the future? Because as you know, they're looking for kind of a place to sit and to help them figure out how to do their organizations, how to apply for grants, and all these different things that you supply. And you might have already met with them, I think, or
Yes.
at least initially. So just
Yeah.
anything that you could share at this point.
Yeah. So do you want to take this one? I know you're the
I can
food.
start. So yeah, we
Yeah.
did, so Shasta Savage is our Director of Leadership Development and Consulting Services, and Cindy's old position. And I met with Katie Hallis, I would say maybe 2 months ago, to start to look at what some of the infrastructure supports might be for the network as the plan is moving forward. It was kind of an initial conversation, more focused on starting to think about what might be some of the either personal capital kinds of roles that they might have, or consulting out what kinds of things they might be looking for to build that network. So yeah, we have been in touch with them. I think for them, lots of doors are open. They're still thinking about their opportunities, but certainly we committed to being part of advising and working with them around that.
Yeah, and I think we've definitely already opened some doors around fund development and fundraising for them. We've connected them with several local foundations and funders, so we've already kind of started to build them up from a capacity perspective. And we agree it's an important component. It crosses so many, individuals and sector providers. So we will continue to support them.
Thank you.
Okay, Randy.
Yes, thank you. On that data specialist, how is that information you're gathering shared with the county? Is it ever shared with the county, and how does that, what benefit does it provide?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're working on right now is really to be able to take, some of those really kind of headline measures of the work that HSC is doing and be able to bring those to the county through a series of dashboards. You can dig into that. So that's something that we're hoping to have over the next couple of months. I have a meeting on Friday where we're going to look at, kind of the initial go through. It's not quite ready for public viewing yet. It's still a little wonky, but that's our hope in one area. And then already, we've been able to use that, the information that's been generated for our own kind of public reporting. It's affected how we do our 2-on-1 follow-up. We've completely changed our approach to following up with folks, whereas we used to do a sample throughout the year of the 20,000 or 15,000 or whatever it is folks who contact us. We would do a sample and follow up with them just to see how things went. We're now asking anyone who's willing to share their phone number. We send them a follow-up, just a check-in a couple of days later after their contact. And so now we're reaching out to nearly everyone who's willing, as opposed to just a small percentage. We've already seen in the month and a half, 2 months since we've been piloting this, we've already seen more response to our follow-up than we have gotten in a whole year otherwise. And our 2-on-1 staff recently presented to the statewide Association of 2-on-1s. We are the only one doing anything remotely like that, following up with everybody to see how things are going. So in addition to data being generated, the data specialist also helped develop the system for us to be able to reach out to everybody who's contacting 2-on-1. Because a person might, they might call or text or however they contact 2-on-1 with some questions. That doesn't mean that everything was finished. They might have to contact some other organizations. They might have to do some thinking on their own. They might have other questions. And so it gives us an opportunity to follow up with people in a really low pressure way by text message or by phone if they want, or email, but mostly by text message is what people want, and get a chance to see how things are going with them and offer any more assistance if they need it. So in addition to the data collected, also setting up the data systems to be able to better serve people.
Just an informational point, I know that the food system people, Policy Council did meet with you folks, and they appreciated it. Their timing wasn't good, right? I mean, your plan was pretty much already submitted, and they were really getting started. So I will be submitting an OTR for, a small OTR for the food system plan. So I just wanted to give a heads up. And it will go
Okay.
through CCE.
All right, anyone else? Okay, Cindy, John, are we moving on to your supported agencies? Thank you, and that's on page 510.
All right, so I have the opportunity of kicking this one off. And we had the great pleasure to talk with you back in June about the whole process, so we won't get too much into that. But just to remind you that, our process continues through the year. We begin for the following year all the way back in April. We meet with everybody, bring the applicants together with our committee. We talk with agencies throughout the year, and we include in our review both a programmatic and a financial review. So lots of talking, lots of questions, and a really thorough dive into what the agencies are requesting. Just want to point out to you one piece. In 2024, the city supports about $475,000 of the community agency's budget through sales tax collection, and that is based on the last completed year's actuals. So that's based on the 2022 sales tax collections. And I brought the sales tax spreadsheet, or the flow chart of the agreement. I won't hold it up, but I know Dan mentioned he wanted to get it printed on a T-shirt, which I thought maybe we should do.
We've actually all seen that. And,
So, Dan
and
wants it on
except
the
for
screen here.
Veronica, who really loves flowcharts, the rest of us never want to see it again.
So that's the piece there. So just to give you a sense of who's on the review committee this year, a number of really committed volunteers. You can see their names up there, but folks with experience in private philanthropy, in government, in boards of directors, in other organizations, in services. So good group of folks. We meet together in April and May and June for about 30 hours together, not counting all the reading and everything else that they're doing. So it's a pretty big volunteer ask, but we really appreciate their support. Just so you can see, and I know you've got the handouts that Norma sent around, but these are the agencies that participated in the process this year. So about 21, a good number of repeats and some new ones as well. For us this year, and we shared some of this in the summer, but for us really we see three big areas just to share with you about the agencies. So the first is around organizational capacity. And so in the community, right, though we have emerged more or less from how things were during COVID, we still see community need remaining high. Lots of need related to housing, transportation, and food, all of which have come up already today. We see that organizations are they've emerged from that hunkering down moment, and they're ready to do things again, maybe some things that are different, or return to things that were happening before, but they may be constrained by resources. They may not have the funds to be able to do all that they want to do. They may not have the staff, but they are ready to do those things again. And as Cindy alluded to in our section about HSC, capacity is a focus not only for us as an organization, but also for other local funders, and that's been a real topic of conversation across the funder organizations that we participate in as well. So that's a big area of interest. For organizations, staff and volunteer base is still challenging. Recruitment and retention is challenging. We have seen organizations that have invested in their staff. They've made that commitment to pay more in order to be able to retain or keep their staff. And for those organizations that have done that, it has been successful. But now the question is that kind of work sustainable? If funding doesn't follow suit, is it possible to keep that for everyone, or to be able to keep the staffing levels at the place where they were. So that's a kind of a question for the next year or so. And for organizations, we're seeing many organizations share with us that volunteer recruitment is harder at all levels, from frontline, I need you to do these tasks in our office, all the way up to board recruitment. So we're seeing people are being just a little bit choosier with the kinds of things, a lot choosier maybe, with the kinds of things that they volunteer their time for. And so it's just made it a bit more challenging for organizations that rely on volunteers. And then finally, funding. It's variable across organizations, but we are hearing that in general, donations are trending down. A mixture of individuals and other donors kind of preparing for what might be a recession, being a little bit more picky about where they give, or for some organizations that really had a benefit during COVID. They saw their donations rise. Now they're seeing those fall back to where they had been. And then we do see kind of a challenge for many organizations, especially if they have state contracts that don't include cost of living adjustments. So getting back to that second section up there, if organizations made the commitment to pay their staff better to keep them around, but the state or other funders aren't increasing their contracts, then it's either coming out of other places, it's coming out of their fund balance, or they're hoping that they'll be able to raise that money through donations or other means. So it's a little bit tough. We have a great committed human services staff in Tompkins County, but they've got to pay the bills too, and so organizations are trying to make that work. We have a handful of over-target requests. I'm going to share the first two, and then Cindy will share the rest. There are two that are recurring requests, repeat requests that have been recommended by the county administrator. The first is year 3 of 3 for ultimate reentry opportunities, Sunflower House evaluation and programming. And so this is an OTR that's in partnership with OAR. And you'll see a little bit later that their year 3 of 3 for the Sunflower House is also recommended. But this evaluation project is to support Sunflower House. It's broken down into 3 years. The first year was really designed to create the assessment and put together the way that project would be evaluated. The second year, which is what we're in now, is conducting interviews with stakeholders and identifying where the gaps are in services for people who are residing or possibly prospectively might reside at OAR's Sunflower House. And then next year is the development of that final report and recommendations to Tompkins County based on what has been learned. So this was a 3-year OTR, and it is recommended for $35,000 for the 3rd year of that initiative. The second is do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in. I know that whenever we approved this 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago, part of the conversation was that it would give them 3 years to be able to sustain without the county paying for this amount. Is there any way we can have an update on if they're prepared to start picking up the tab next year?
Yeah, so we do have, I should have mentioned earlier, we do have representatives from all of the organizations requesting OTRs here.
Okay.
So if there's a question we can't answer and you're interested, you certainly may. We've got 2 in person here and two on Zoom. Okay. But yeah, the understanding that we have as well is that the evaluation is a 3-year. There may be other things that come out of that, particularly around the gaps. And so that may be an area, for future discussion, but that would be part of the conversation as part of that evaluation. Yeah. Sure. And so then for our second OTR is one that the county has supported. It's not a multi-year OTR; it's a single-year OTR, but it has been supported for several years, and that's Law New York's reentry project. And this project is doing well. It's supporting the needs of individuals who are returning to the community after incarceration, particularly in helping them to overcome barriers to employment or helping them to ensure that their rights are being upheld as they return to the community. This project has shifted over the last few years. It's a really strong partnership now with Cornell Law School, Cornell ILR, and other partners, and they've really been supporting lots of folks. I just got an update earlier today. They have the Law New York staff are working with 39 student volunteers, which allows the lawyers at Law New York to focus on areas where you really need a lawyer and not a law school volunteer. So there is a cost savings there. And their goal is to support at least 50 people each semester, and they are well on their way to doing so.
Can I ask you a question about that, John? Generally, when a law school has a program like that enables students to volunteer at an organization and provide at least paralegal services, they get some kind of credit for their volunteer work. Is that the case with this program?
So that would be a question that's beyond my knowledge, but we could ask Keith. Keith McCafferty is the managing attorney here at Law New York.
The program is still relatively new, so I don't think students are getting credit for this. We are working with students in a variety of programs. There's a veterans practicum and a housing practicum, and I believe they're getting credit through the law school for those, but I don't think the reentry clinic has reached that level yet. And it's both undergraduate students from the ILR school and law students who are involved as volunteers in this program.
Well, I would urge you to work towards an end game where they are getting credit. And if they are getting credit, then perhaps the law school should be contributing to the cost of this program.
Yes, we are hopefully headed there, and then over the next couple of years, we have a very close working relationship with Michaela Azimi at the law school, and we talk about funding for these kinds of things all the time.
Because you're providing free teaching.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a question, Craig?
Yes, I do. You said that this program was to support, their goal is to support 50 individuals per semester. Is that 50 participants in the reentry project, or is that 50 students working with this program?
It would be 50 clients.
Clients,
so that
okay.
would be folks returning from prison or jail. It's a lot of looking at their criminal records and finding problems in those records and getting them corrected and getting records sealed and getting them certificates so that they can participate in the workforce without discrimination.
Great. And so that's the goal is 50?
Yes.
Where are you currently at?
The semester just started. I heard we already have 30 clients enrolled in sort of project.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Right. So that's the extent of mine. I'll pass it over to Cindy for the rest.
Okay. Okay, so these are OTRs that the review committee recommended, and at this point have not been recommended by the county administrator. So I'm just going to give some brief overview of those. So the first is the GIAC HETP program, which is the Hospitality Employment Training Program. GIAC has requested $50,000 to support this program. In the past, this program has been supported by Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG money, through the city of Ithaca. And over the last 2 years, they have been reducing their amount by approximately $50,000 in the last 2 years due to their own funding constraints. And this program is another kind of employment support program for folks who are facing barriers to employment. So folks with disabilities, folks who are formerly incarcerated, may have issues of homelessness, and it's basically wraparound support. So it's training, and it's replacement and internship programs, and then even 3 months out after they graduate, the HETP staff support them and try to continue to make sure their employment is successful. The review committee has had conversations with GIAC, and Leslyn is on Zoom right now. We recommended that there might be an opportunity for GIAC to support, or to get funding through the program that is supported by the hotel room occupancy tax through the department.
Strategic Tourism Planning Board.
STPB, yeah.
Thank you. And maybe some other sources as well. But to avoid a funding gap for 2024, the committee is requesting a one-time funding for this program.
Mike?
So why is the city cutting this?
Because they haven't gotten any money.
Question for Leslyn.
The city is not cutting the program. The city, outside of the IURA, which is its own separate entity that we get the primary grant from for this program, the city continues to put its share into the program, which ranges anywhere from $25,000 to about $50,000 each year, depending. So the city itself is not cutting what it puts in. The amount that was cut is what we get from the grant.
The grant from IURA?
From the IURA, correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Greg?
Yeah, this seems like a no-brainer for a STI grant, Strategic Tourism Implementation Grant,
Yep.
Especially around hospitality workforce development. That is a rolling, ongoing, you submit a letter, the committee reviews it, and then it gets brought on a rolling basis. Katie, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong. So I think that might be a great place for this to fit, knowing that there is still some STI money left in that bucket. It might be a way to help alleviate our budget constraints while still serving the needs of the organization that's doing the work.
I think that's a great suggestion, Greg. Anybody else? Okay, Cindy, go ahead.
Okay. The next is Ultimate Reentry Opportunity, or URO, Beyond the Box Certification Pilot. URO requested $38,500 for a one-time over-target request for a pilot program to basically support Tompkins County employers in their hiring of people who are people in reentry. So folks that may have been justice system involved, or have past criminal records, et cetera, to help employers' readiness with ensuring that they are prepared to successfully employ folks. So it's a very comprehensive pilot. There's a needs assessment, and they're working with a DEI consultant, and there's training on the employer side, there's coaching on the employer side, there's coaching on the potential employee side. So it's a very kind of holistic program. From what we have been told, there have been quite a few larger employers in the county that have expressed interest in the pilot, and one included Tompkins County. There was some conversations with workforce, and they did express an interest. This pilot project would support like a demonstration of the program. And also that would also leverage URO to get external funding for the program as well. And that I believe is pending. And Tully is here, I think. Is he still here? Yeah, he's here, from URO, in case you have questions.
Does anybody have a question for Tylee? Looks like you're off the hook.
All right. I was ready.
Yeah, I know you were, and we appreciate the fact that you came.
By the way, I just have to say, after being here for 7 years and seeing the level of the questions that are coming from the legislature to the folks who are requesting the funding, it's definitely a depth of learning and growth that I've seen here in the legislature. So thank you guys for your due diligence in that. So, all right, I'm out.
Well, thank you. I think fiscal necessity is making us a lot more careful than we have been at times in the past, so.
Can I ask a quick question?
You sure can.
Is this funding for additional staff or part of a staff person?
It's really for training for the employers to get them ready. It's also for coaching. So once they get done with the training, which is several months, then what we do is we actually coach them through the process of actually getting reentry employees going through the myriad of challenges that they're going through so they can adjust their workplace culture and environment so it's suitable and understanding and aware of the challenges that people in reentry are facing. So
you're hiring consultants to do the training, or your folks are doing the training?
Yes, so we're hiring consultants to do like the DEI consultant.
Okay.
We're also doing coaching, which is a energetic profile assessment. So we're giving the employer an assessment evaluation of where they are energetically, culturally speaking, and then giving them, okay, this is where you are. Where do you want to be if you want to continue to hire this population, retain this population? So it's pretty comprehensive, as the executive director of HSE said. So
Thanks for doing this. I'm sure most employers could benefit from this.
yeah, I think so as well.
Thank you. Hey, Cindy?
Oh, am I doing this one? Oh, okay. Sunflower House Management. Okay, Sunflower House, OAR Sunflower House Management, 69,472, one-time OTR for case management. This is year 3 of a 3-year over target request. So this program does work in collaboration with URO, and it supports 12 units for folks who are parolees, including 3 women, to help them with reentry. So basically, it's a case management program. So just as to give you an idea of the scope of the program, 106 folks applied to be at Sunflower House, 37 have entered, and 28 have exited. 22% have moved on to permanent housing, and about 40% had moved on to other temporary housing. 70% have sought mental health supports, and only 3 have been arrested. So this has been recommended by the county administrator.
Dan?
I see this is year 3 of a 3-year. What's the plan for year 4? Where's the funding anticipated to be coming from?
I believe Dave Sanders is on the Zoom call. Hi, Dave.
Good afternoon. Yes, we have at least 3 different funding streams we're looking into. With a couple other areas. I don't know how much detail you want me to give, Dan.
Is your plan to try to get complete funding from another source, or do we expect to see you again next year? That's my question.
There's a possibility you may not. That's the goal. We definitely want to diversify our funding streams. We're too dependent on the county. So that's one of our major goals this year, is to look at different funding resources. We're looking at SERPA money. We've got a wonderful relationship with Reach Medical in order to make that happen. We're looking at federal grants. We've been doing that for the last several months. So yes, we definitely want to diversify our money. We don't want to be overly dependent on county resources in case there are tough times like we are right now. But that's where we're at. We're moving forward. I'm optimistic, but I can't predict what will be happening in a year from now.
Thank you.
But it's looking good. I can say that. It's looking good.
Okay, and last but not least. So this last over target request was for $17,000 for OAR core services. Basically, this is a maintenance of effort request. OAR has seen a significant increase in their client service numbers. They've risen 247% since mid-2020. And they've seen kind of more complex folks with complicated situations. So there's an increased need for things like training and de-escalation and, kind of trauma-informed client response, things like that. So OAR is requesting additional funding to cover kind of these ongoing needs. It's interesting, John and I did a little bit of the math, and if you, that crazy flow chart, the impact of the city's sales tax is, OAR gets proportionately less of the sales tax revenue allocated to their programs. So with this increase, it kind of gets them a little more in line with the amount of tax money that the other agencies get. So it's kind of evens them out a little bit.
Okay, any questions? Mike?
If that's not funded, what will OAR have to not be doing?
So Mike, primarily I have 3 budgets, and one of my budgets, I have 3 staff that I'm cutting by 5 hours, 2 independent contractors that I've cut by 4 hours. Obviously, with the increases, just the 12.5% increases in health insurance, which we'll get next year, is almost $17,000 increase right there. If I were to give my staff a 3% raise, that's $23,000 right there. So again, we're asking for $17,000. We're very concerned about training. We're very concerned about maintenance of effort. We have about 35.5 people a day come through our office. On 9/11, we had 57 people come through our office. So unfortunately, we'd have to decrease staff, which then would make a greater hardship on other people. But that was the only way I could possibly maintain it.
Thank you.
Hope I answered your question. Yep.
Anyone else? Dan?
Yes, my question is not about this program in particular, but about this section of the budget. I know that there was a contingency budget at Human Services Coalition that was depleted this year. Is a replenishment of that anywhere hidden in this budget?
No, that hasn't been. We've just begun talking about that. So it might be something that we're going to ask a legislator to bring forward an amendment for.
Thank you.
The depletion of that happened simultaneous to the budget process, so that did not find its way into the over targets for the Human Services Coalition.
Randy?
Yes, I'm on the page 10, and this may be a question for Norma. I'm trying to understand, this is the consolidated of all of the requests? Is that what this is? On all these numbers? So as I'm looking at this, it says actuals for 23 or $1.7 million something, and the target is $1.2 million for, if it looks to me like it's $400,000 roughly less with those recommended OTRs. Am I looking at this correctly, or what am I missing here?
I'm trying to get to what the page you're talking about. You're looking at the...
Section 5, page 10. So I'm just trying to understand how, or has it been separated out now? So, because it was in the original modified budget was over 3 million local.
Remember, Randy, if you go to the next page, there are 2 other budget lines. There's the consolidated budget, there's the basic subsistence, and there's the OAR core services. And that is kind of confusing, so maybe somebody could explain that.
So I'm just curious what the total dollar amount is compared to last year. Because even those are quite a bit less. So I'm not clear, but you can get back to me on that if you want.
I wasn't ignoring you, I was trying to get to the right to the page.
Can I just say that the numbers in Dan's paper book are different than what's on the computer, if we're looking at the same things?
So the online version gets updated automatically from the financial system, so yeah, they're going to be slightly different.
I'm just curious, overall, is the budget request this year higher than last year? Total.
With the, it wouldn't, yeah, it's higher than the target, but it's not, I don't believe, I do want to look at it a little closer. I don't believe it's actually higher than what was requested last year because there were one-time funds that were approved in the previous year's budget. And I don't believe that these folks have come back with all of the OTRs that they have asked for in the past.
Okay. In my second question, there was a request from the Food Distribution Network to get additional funds this year. I don't know if that happened or not. And did you request additional funds for that for next year?
Yeah, so the Food Distribution Network, which is the network of pantries and their food distribution sites, they requested, so last year through this process, their allocation was $80,000, or 2023 at $80,000. They requested $100,000, and the committee's recommendations were able to include that into the target. So that is included.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Travis?
This is a process question. How do folks become part of HSA? I've been confused. I've never really got an answer that really cleared this up for me.
It's a really good question. So the Human Services Coalition, this is the county's funding, right? So the Human Services Coalition manages that for the county. Oftentimes, folks enter the process through a legislator. So an agency might approach you and say, hey, would the legislature be willing to support us? And we have instructed y'all to send them to us. So, and that happens sometimes through county administration as well. Once in a while, they'll call us directly, and there's kind of a vetting process, because as contracting with the county, we want to be sure that any requests that comes through is appropriate for county funding. So is it reaching a significant number of individuals? Is it enhancing the services or quality of life throughout the county? Those kind of criteria. So there's kind of, multiple points of entry. I think the majority of the time we're looking to the legislature or the county administration to send us those requests.
So if an agency doesn't have a relationship with a legislator or the county administrator, I guess my question is, if this is supposed to be open to agencies in the community, what is the process? And we don't have to go through all that now.
Yeah.
If there's no real process except for knowing somebody, that's an issue, and that's a conversation we should have at some point in time. 21 people were part of it this year. I'm sure there was others that would have liked to have been. I know I've been asked countless times, and I tell people what to do, and they seem to always miss the deadline. So if folks in the community don't know the deadline, if there isn't any real process, That's a problem for those who aren't getting funded. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm sure there's some agencies that have been funded for several years now. If other agencies continue to get funding and new folks don't know how to get funding, there's an equity issue. So I'd like to have a further conversation at some other time, but real soon, about how this process should be equitable to all nonprofits in the community.
Shauna?
Yeah, I share that sentiment too, Travis. And I think one of the conversations that I was concerned about is that we have an agency that's providing great service here in Tompkins County and has been a trusted provider of much of our homeless population that I have sent to Human Services Coalition, and I believe I've had a conversation as well. And year after year, I'm not seeing them listed. And so perhaps we need to sit down and have that conversation, because I look at the other agencies and they all do great work, but it's not fair for an agency to do 90% of the lift and not receive county funds, and then agencies that might not be doing as much of a lift to receive, 10, 15% of the county funding that we're putting out there.
So I can share too that this is a conversation that we've been having with county administration as well. Absolutely something that we've brought up too as a, when you had the Community Recovery Fund grants, which were, widely offered. And so we also want to be prepared for next year when many organizations may say, this is something that we need. We're doing important things. And so that's something that we've already started conversations with. Part of our role as your agent is to support the way that you want to handle it. So there are, a few concerns. One is, if you open it up to many more applicants, there's just decisions about, is there an increase in funding allocated? Does it become much more competitive? There's lots of things that go into this, and I think that's a conversation that we would be really looking forward to having.
I think just so that I don't believe in being vague. I think Reach Medical should have definitely been part of the budget here, and and I think I want to respect the recommendations you're bringing forth, and so I won't vote against that. But in future years, I think it does not need to be assumed that just because we've been giving money to an organization doesn't mean in future years that they're going to receive that same amount. And I understand it from also a nonprofit that they can't operate a budget without a commitment from the county. But I think, unfortunately, I think that we're a forever changing county, and we really need to open it up to some new agencies. So, thank you.
If I could offer a contrarian view, I would offer a plea that somehow or another we consolidate these agencies. There seem to be quite a lot of them that are trying to meet a specific problem from a slightly different perspective. And I wonder if there are economies of scale that could be experienced if some of them were consolidated. We have areas that we need to address, reentry issues, homelessness, food security, medical care to marginalized communities, mental health care, substance abuse. And we probably have at least 3 to 5 agencies in our county that address each of those problems. It just seems to me that if somehow or another we could have one agency that focuses on each problem, or 1 or 2, and I don't know how you achieve that, but it would seem to me that the best place to start would be the Human Services Coalition, because your organization really knows who everybody is and what they're doing. I don't know if that's even possible, because I know nobody wants to give up their turf. But it just seems to me that with fewer agencies delivering more focused services, we could really maximize the impact of the money that we give to these organizations. So I don't know if you can do that, but I hope you'd consider it.
That is, yes.
Okay, I've got Annie and Mike.
It's a difficult question to answer, and it's you know, you can see both sides of that kind of issue. First of all, even in the short time that I've been with Human Services Coalition, I think that organizations are doing a much better job in understanding each other and partnering and leveraging the strength of their own agencies and organizations. So that's been really beneficial. They trust each other more, I think, and they're working together, I think, more collaboratively. And yes, nobody wants to give up their turf. They're all, you know, independent organizations who have very specific missions with very committed, dedicated board and staff. I do a lot of consulting with boards, and you know, some of the organizations that I consult with they struggle financially, they struggle from an infrastructure perspective, and they are independent organizations that have to make their own decisions. So what we do at HSC is try to lead them to ask the really challenging questions. You know, I say to a lot of boards, you know, you have to be committed to the mission, not the organization. Your mission comes first. So if your mission can be delivered in a more effective way for the folks that you are serving, then everything has to be on the table. That takes a long time for, you know, organizations to come to those realizations, but we keep trying. And we're picking away, yeah. But and it's hard, and there's plenty of need out there.
Need grows and resources shrink, right. And
exactly. Yeah. So, but we'll keep trying, Deborah.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, I've got Annie, Mike, and Greg.
Yeah, I wanted to say I do see most, if I'm not in touch with all of the nonprofits, but I really do see, as you said, you know, a collaboration between them. And what I often see is not working together and trying to take bites out of the apple. Like, we'll do this, we have this funding this year for that, well, we have this funding this year for that, or we can get donations, or we have a sponsor for this. So I see a lot of them being very nimble. Do they need the support and the assistance of HSC in a lot of ways, not just financially, but, you know, with all the other services you offer to organizations? I won't go over them again. You've said all the assistance that you provide them. So I think it's something, if we said at the county, we want to take over a lot of this, could we then say, okay, then there's financing, you know, every year for this? And I think that'd be different. But I think in some ways, I don't want to take that over. If organizations are willing to do that, I'm always willing to say, how can we help you to keep doing that? Because they can take donations, they can be more flexible, and often are on the ground more sometimes than certain things that we do. And I just want to reiterate again, you mentioned staffing. When I talk to these organizations, they are really struggling, as the county and other organizations do. They're really struggling with staffing. They've had to increase how much they're paying people, and they're all fighting for the same folks. And that's something that we're going to need to keep in our mind over the next couple of years. Like, how are they going to stay sustainable to keep doing it? The minimum, and as Deborah mentioned, the services, the need is greater, and the services right now that these organizations are able to provide is a little bit less because of their staffing. So I want to just thank you and all the organizations that go through you.
Thank you, Annie. Mike?
I really want to thank you for the work you do. A lot of us don't see it every day, but the whole concept of the HSC was to bring together these not-for-profits, to have them looked at in a non-political way, to have them receive advice and training, which I think you folks do a great job at, and for us here at the legislature not to have to have requests for 20 OTRs every budget season. We had a couple in the past years where legislators have, at the last minute, brought in a couple of OTR requests, and some of us weren't happy that that happened, but we're all independently elected, so those things do happen. But Deborah, I think you're right. If we could bring some of these together, it'd be great. But it's part of Tompkins County and Ithaca that we have a lot of not-for-profits all trying to do a particularly focused thing, which their argument for is usually excellent. How we bring them together, I don't know, but I don't think the HSC's job is to tell you consolidate with this one, you consolidate with that one. You can suggest it, you can control it somewhat in your with your funding stream, but if we want to get these to go together, we're going to either have to say to them, consolidate, or you don't get funded at all. And I don't think I'm ready to say that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Greg?
Yeah, just real quick. I think the idea of consolidation makes sense from a financial and a business standpoint, right? Often not-for-profits, sort of can struggle with the idea of how do we run this mission-driven thing like a business. But I also think, too, that we may have it within our ability to incentivize, either through some sort of grant or some additional funding, to the Human Services Coalition for groups that are maybe modeling or doing the behavior in which we would like to see, right? If we want to see greater cooperation or cross-collaboration, maybe there's some grant funding for how do organizations with similar missions work together in a unique way, and there's a little bit of one-time money. Or how do groups that maybe one group is struggling and another group is successful, and they kind of absorb each other and realign their mission to be one organization? Maybe there's some funding available for that. So I don't think just sitting here around the table and saying, hey, we want you to do this, makes any sense. I think if we really want to see something like that happen, we definitely have to put some money towards it and incentivize the behavior in which we're hoping to see. So that would be my only part is, maybe there could be a proposal for next budget season where it's not as constrained on how we could look for greater cross-collaboration or consolidation or whatever through some sort of unique or special grant program administered by the HSC.
Well, I sincerely hope we're not as constrained a year from now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Travis?
To Greg's point, I'll keep this quick. It's done all the time when you apply for grants. You apply for a grant, and one of the things that you have to do is collaborate with other folks. It's just that simple. It's done all the time in nonprofit. It's not a big thing. But to Mike's point, we don't want it to be political, but we heard that folks have to know a legislator, or know the county administrator, so it does make it political. So the whole point is to completely remove that from this process and have it be open in some way.
Oh, can I comment on that?
Yes, please do.
I don't think you have to, those are the only two options. If they know HSC, they can contact us. I think the only with Reach Medical, it was pure timing. It was 100% pure timing. They called literally the day that we were submitting our budget.
Called the year before, though.
I think
I called you guys the year before.
Oh,
Yep.
and I think that may have been, again, I think that was after it's a timing thing. I'm going to reach out to Reach so we know exactly next year that they will be included. But that is, I think, the beauty of HSC is that is if they call us, we can get them into the process. Period. End of story. The issues, though, or the considerations are about how open you want that process to be. That feels icky when I say it, but there are financial, considerations. I'm a bleeding heart. I want to give all the nonprofits all the money, but, it's your money and it's your process. So, like John said, we're looking forward to having those conversations and maybe putting some structure and some criteria in place.
So what I'm hearing is broader access may result in less money for each of the agencies that participates. On the other hand, if you want to at least provide every organization with an opportunity to participate, then I assume that on the county's website somewhere, we've got some direction as to how the Human Services Coalition evaluates the needs of the supported agencies. Is that not the case?
I don't know if it's on your website.
Would it be possible to just have something on the website that directs any agency that's interested in applying for county funding to the HSC? Because I think that's probably the best, most open way to let people know that that's the direction they should proceed in. And if there's a deadline to participate in that process, that could be on the website as well.
We could certainly make that happen.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Norma?
I sent out an email. There is an issue with that. You found an error, Randy. So we will send out a new page for the Human Services Coalition. It's right online. It printed wrong.
Is that one of the benefits of using the online book, Norma?
Judge.
Don't be snarky, youngster. Okay, we have Katie Borgella, our Commissioner of Planning and Sustainability, and that department's OTRs start on page 4-119 of your book.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all today, and thanks for entertaining the department's request for over-target funding. We have 3 over-target requests for you tonight. Let's see. The first one is the Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program. That is a program we've been running through our department since 2019. It provides between $5,000 and $10,000 in funding to municipalities working to address their community's housing concerns, to allow them to hire consultants or hire staff, to write grants or develop plans or create implementation strategies to encourage and expand housing availability and affordability. We found it to be a meaningful way the county can contribute and support municipalities who are trying to address their own self-identified housing priorities. It's been well received by the municipal partners so far. Over the years, this grant program has provided funding to prepare community development block grants, for housing rehabilitation, and a town center traffic study, a neighborhood development financial feasibility study, and it's already resulted in $1 million of CDBG funding coming into the community to 2 of our local governments, and there are a couple other applications out there waiting for funding. So it's a continuation of an existing program. It's been funded over the years through one-time OTRs. Since the beginning of the budget, we were under the impression that one-time OTRs, when they've been going on for a long time, should be requested to be put into our target budget. I understand that perhaps the landscape of the budget may have changed since then. So really, our goal is to continue this program. We wanted it in our target budget because it gives the municipalities an understanding that this is an ongoing source of funding and that they can apply for. And we are requesting $5,000 more than last year for a total of $20,000 to allow an additional project to be funded.
You want us to ask questions now or wait till the end?
We can do it now, that's fine. Okay, I've got Annie, I've got Randy, I've got Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. I was going to ask about how much this has leverage, but so this has been, program's been going on for 3-4 years now?
It was started
longer?
In 2019. It was funded at $50,000, and then 2020 it was zeroed out because of the pandemic. In 2021, we requested $15,000. 2022 is 15. This year's 15. But our total expenditures have only been $45,000 because a couple of the projects, through thinking through the grant award, were able to come up with kind of better funding sources that would still help them achieve their goals.
Yeah, I think it's a small amount to, to help leverage that kind of money and, different projects, including affordable projects in municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Yes, Katie, do the municipalities have to match any of that, or is it just completely funded by this?
It's just a full grant. Yep, no match required.
Okay, Mike?
Out of curiosity, which municipalities were funded for 2023?
2023, make sure I've got this right. The town of Ithaca was funded for their South Hill financial feasibility study. They're looking at PIF financing to try to figure out funding for infrastructure for a traditional neighborhood that they've zoned for up there. And the town, let's see, which one is the other one? Of Danby has a CDBG rental rehabilitation application in the works.
You've used about half of it for 23 then, right?
No, one of them was for $10,000 and the other was for $15,000, so that was the full amount of our funding.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought they were $5,000 grants.
It's structured so that if it's $5,000 or less, it's in my power to approve it if it meets the guidelines that the legislature approves. If it's $10,000, then it goes fully to the legislature for a decision.
Thank you.
Annie?
And I know since I have several municipalities in my districts, some have said not only does it leverage this money, but it gets them hooked up with consultants that help them figure out, we can also apply for this, or they can help us with, with other things. So I think it probably leverages way more adjacent money.
I've heard that same thing, Annie, that it creates partnerships with consultants, which was kind of one of our goals of the program.
So an out-of-the-box thought, how much do we have in the Natural Infrastructure Capital Fund?
I think it's around $800,000.
Right, and we've had a lot of money in that fund for a very long time. So would it be possible, say in a year like this, where we're really strapped, to move $20,000 or $25,000 from that fund into this program?
Okay by me, but.
I think those, we're not bonding for that. It's 100% local. So I think it's.
And I don't think it's in any way
legislatory
restricted or
perspective.
allocated. So I think that, I know that this is probably not the result you want, but I mean, for the time being, that's something that we ought to consider.
Now, again, my goal is to see this program continue even during a lean year, and then, maybe we could think about future opportunities, but that's my ultimate goal.
Yeah, so I would just offer that as a suggestion you all might consider. Anybody else on this one? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the second over-target request is for broadband planning assistance. The legislature since 2022 has authorized funds for us to be able to contract with ECC Technologies to provide us with expert advice on how to expand broadband to all unserved addresses. In 2023, ECC completed the plan for broadband expansion, as well as helped our staff in preparing a request for proposals that currently is open right now to see what internet service providers might be willing to work with us to serve those addresses. We anticipate in 2024 that we would need additional assistance from ECC to vet the proposals that we receive from the RFP, to apply for grants to help offset some of the costs associated with the expansion, and for developing contracts and overseeing installations with internet service providers in the event we find some partners through the RFP process to work with. So these funds will allow our staff to continue to access expert guidance in this topic, and we only expend these funds as needed.
Anybody? Okay, next.
The last one is a hard-hitting piece of increasing the dues for two organizations that are kind of pass-throughs through my department. It's for the Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization and Southern Tier 8 Regional Board. The dues increases were both proposed starting in 2021 and were meant to enhance the capacity of those organizations to work on our behalf for the entire region. So we are asking for target increase, just like we did in 2022 and 2023, so that we can cover those expenses in our budget. The OTR is requesting $2,874 to increase the Cayuga Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization and $1,600 to increase Southern Tier 8 dues.
Questions? Mike?
Southern Tier, we've had our ups and downs with them over the years. Are there any Appalachia grants that, I realize our strategic planning grant is coming out of that, but I'm talking about grants for bricks and mortar projects. Are there any of those that our municipalities or organizations ought to be applying for?
Yeah, I mean, the offering is always widely distributed every spring, but in the past, in 2019, the town of Newfield got a grant through the ARC for their drinking water supply source study. There was a grant in 2020. The city of Ithaca got, in partnership with AFCU, got a program called Seeding Economic Development, which is for entrepreneurial startups. And another example, TC3 got $150,000 in 2021 to develop their healthcare and wellness program. It's a few examples.
Okay, Rich.
Thanks. I actually had a question about the broadband. It sounded like you were asking for the 60 because you're not sure what's going to happen in 2024. Would it be possible to accept a reduced amount if we needed to do that, say at the $30,000 amount? Would that allow you to do some of what you need to do and just go slower?
What I would imagine is that when we started to run low on funds, we would probably need to come to the legislature and ask for contingent funds. I understand these grants are fairly expensive for consultants to put together, which is why we put a placeholder in here. But to answer your question, yes, we could get by until we started not to get by, and then we would come to the legislature for additional funding or a decision.
We could have the conversation then. Thanks.
So I guess my takeaway is that the STA has been pretty valuable since we got back in, and I appreciate that. And as to the Watershed Intermunicipal Organization, honestly, folks, I think it would look absolutely terrible if Tompkins County wasn't part of that organization. So, yeah, I think for $4,478, we're just going to have to suck it up and come up with the money to pay these increased dues. But that's just my take on it. Does anybody else have any questions right now? Annie?
Yeah, I might have said it differently, but I second what Deborah said, that I'm also looking at, we mentioned about target and not target, not necessarily about these requests, but I'm thinking that we might have to rip the Band-Aid off and some of these go into, target and raise the levy, because otherwise we're going to have the same issue, if not worse, next year if we're not raising taxes to cover these things. We're just going to have a whole bunch of things either to cut next year or raise the taxes even more. So I just wanted to put that out there to my colleagues. That's part of, I think we've had a little bit of discussion on there. And yes, I think we need to pay those. And for broadband, since that was brought up, I mean, we've been working on this for a number of years. We're like this close. And just remember, if anybody here, I know out in rural areas where I am, the constituents calling me and couldn't work at home, couldn't have their kids working at home. And so there's still kids come home with homework and they need to do it. A lot of people are still working remotely. So let's not slow down on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Rich. Go ahead.
Just an editorial comment. I agree with you and Ann about the dues, but we have to be careful here about segueing into our voting meetings. We shouldn't be making editorial comments yet. We'll be here all night.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? And no editorial comments. Apparently only I'm allowed to make editorial comments.
Was that his editorial comment of the editorial comment?
That was.
Just throwing that out there, Rich. I love you.
As I say, not as I do.
That was editorial, Rich.
That was a letter to the editor for sure.
Okay. All right, well then I think you're off the hook, Katie.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
You too. All right, Tompkins Cortland Community College. Who's here for that? Amy, hi, come on down. Okay, you'll find this on page 5-36 of your book.
Can we say something about the previous?
About editorial comments?
No, about the person that passed away.
Yes, we need to.
Right. Maybe you can say it, Mike, or someone about the previous.
Yes, I guess that would be appropriate. Thank you for reminding me, Annie.
I wanted to say it, but.
Amy says she's going to speak about it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am Amy Kremenek, the Tompkins Cortland Community College president, and I would like to thank everyone who has reached out to the college to express your condolences over the loss of our former president, Dr. Orinthia Montague, who sadly, unexpectedly passed away on Friday. The college has been having ways to honor her and her service and her leadership to the college. Our flag is currently flying at half-staff. Her services are scheduled for Friday. We are providing appropriate ways to honor that service as well for her. But I know that she was very intricately involved in all of the work that happened at the college over a period of 4 years, and we thank her for that service.
Thank you.
I would also like to just start out, I do want to thank Roxanne Buck, who is a trustee here on the side. Roxanne is one of your appointees to the TC3 Board of Trustees. I want to thank her for being here. And also would like to introduce you to Sophia Darling, who is the new Chief Financial Officer and Vice President of Finance and Administration. Sophia started with us on August 1st. Following Bill Talbot's retirement, they were able to spend a couple of days together before he retired, but Sophia has really spent the last several weeks really hitting the ground running, fully immersing herself in the work of the college, and she's also a longtime community leader in her own right, so we appreciate her service so far to TC3. Before I turn it over to Sophia, who's going to talk a little more detail about our requests, since I was with you last in June, I did want to just give you a quick update about the college's enrollment. It continues to be very strong. We are growing now at a rate of about 14% right now in terms of students, which is one of the leading enrollment figures of all the community colleges across SUNY. About 60%, or 6 out of 10 of our students, are from Tompkins and Cortland County. So we're very much a locally focused community college. And much of that is really due in large part to the investment that this body has made over the years. We also have 14 micro-credentials, as you know. I've spoke about that several times. We're also in the process of developing 2 new micro-credentials, one in vacuum technology, the other one in metrology, which is the measurement at very, very fine levels of detail, which we have been told by the local workforce is something very much that they need in terms of skills, both in terms of high-tech, nano, advanced manufacturing, so we're looking forward to that. The lab spaces, which we have updated you on, I believe for the last couple of years, are nearing completion. This is essentially modern spaces for modern programs to serve modern needs. And so our lab spaces, which previously had not been touched really since the 70s when the main campus was built, obviously a lot has changed in technology. This was funded by a $3.2 million grant from SUNY in the state for workforce development, but also for capital needs. You have supported us for many years through these types of requests, but specifically for workforce development. I did want to mention to you that we are going to be hosting tomorrow 400 high school students who are coming to TC3 for Manufacturing Day to meet with local employers who can talk to them about their needs in the workforce and all of the really great opportunities that are available in manufacturing and advanced manufacturing throughout the region. Over the past year, and again, this is workforce development effort that you have supported, we've had more than 1,600 registrants and 116 employers who've participated in workforce development programs through the college. So we have done a great deal of work for that, as well as over 200 people who attended a recent job fair at the college that was also open to members of the community and brought in a number of employers. As we look to the future, and Sophia's going to talk here briefly about that as well, we're really focused on building a career services hub. I think that's an opportunity for the college to serve as a front door, particularly for adult students who may not be necessarily ready to enroll in classes, but do want to have a conversation about their future and about their career, ways that they can make strong, steady improvements in their lives for themselves and also for their families. And then in addition to that, we're going to, I think, start work on developing a facilities master plan. It's been quite a number of years since we've had that, so that will be some effort to come in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, who's going to talk specifically about the over-target requests for '24 around network support and software licensing, as well as the local match for the SUNY infrastructure grants.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Nice to meet everybody. So I'd like to talk about, as Amy mentioned, the network support. So many of these upgrades are contributing to our ability to, technologically advance in many areas for our students. And specifically, we have partnered with a technology company called ComSource, where they specialize in data servers, networking, security, and with these folks, we're able to update our wireless access points, network switches, for instance, fiber optics. In addition to that, enhanced and upgraded security as well throughout the college. The other, we're in the process of laying 10 fiber runs. You have to forgive me as I navigate through the terminology. Cameras are one of the focus areas as well, upgrading them and enhancing our systems across the college. In addition, there are server replacements, and again, to support all these technology upgrades that we're working through. And then also through our various offices in the classrooms, right? In terms of we renovated our labs, for instance, and part of that, those upgrades and reimagining we're updating the technology, advances for our students. So, and also included in this, I should note, is text messaging for our students across campus as well. You'll have to forgive me, I forget the professional service that is helping with that right now, but again, this again brings us to a next level in terms of communication throughout our campus with the students and faculty and staff. So.
Any questions? Randy and then Mike.
Yes, thank you very much. Back when Bill was there, we were meeting once a month roughly to go over infrastructure things. I realize he has been there for quite some time. But are you planning starting that back up, that committee? Or?
Yes, we are. In fact, prior to Bill's departure, he and Sophia had a conversation about the Deferred Maintenance Committee, which consists of representatives of Tompkins County as well as Cortland County, and beginning that. Again, I think that will occur in the near future.
Mike?
Just wanted to point out that another one of our appointees to the TC3 board, Shelley Michelle Nunn, has come in and joined us.
Hi, welcome. Okay, anybody else? Dan?
Thanks. I'm just trying to understand. Are these two different requests that have been put together into one OTR? They seem like different projects.
Yes, it's my understanding that this was a 3-year process, and it is the continuation of that those funds.
So I see 126,000.
There's network support and software licensing. I think they're just two facets of the same project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Greg?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. With the 126,000 for network support and software licensing, is that going to be ongoing past year 3, or is this to get you to a position to be able to sustain that in your budget? It was just additional costs up front. What can we expect moving forward?
So I'll start. So it had been a number of years since the equipment had been improved. And so the investment that you have made has allowed us to be able to make those necessary upgrades. The fiber runs that Sophia mentioned, we've literally replaced the fiber through the entire main building because it had not been done in many, many years. So we don't anticipate that that's going to be needed in the near future. We have also added improved wireless access points. What we had discovered was that things had kind of been cobbled together over the years that was creating some gaps in service for students. And I will tell you, in having conversation with students, the number one issue was the internet. And, you know, for today's students, that's imperative. So we've been able to make the necessary improvements in part of the building. This funding will allow us to continue that. So we anticipate that'll take us for quite some time.
Great. And then with the local match of the infrastructure grant, what does that $155,000 investment on our part leverage in terms of total, I guess it'd be SUNY infrastructure dollars?
It's a 50-50 match on county sponsorship, county support, and then a 50% state match on that. Yeah.
And part of that is that Cortland County is contributing in-kind services. Yeah. Okay. Mike?
I just wanted to add that we have another TC3 board member that just came in.
Oh.
That's Sue Dale Hall, and she's a gubernatorial appointment.
Sue, we just can't get rid of you, and you just can't get rid of us. It's nice to see you. I have a question from Lee.
Hi, Amy or Sophia. Good to see you both. Just a question with the changes or the addition of programs related to the microtechnology. I understand there's some $40 million in CHIPS money that is going to consortiums of colleges in upstate New York to support the micron expansion in the Syracuse area. Is that something that Tompkins Cortland is able to partner in or has an opportunity to link the additional programs to?
Yes, yes, thank you for that question. There is a consortium, a higher ed consortium for both the Micron project as well as the overall micro-nano industry, which includes the Menlo work that's happening here locally in Ithaca. So TC3 is a member of that consortium along with several other community colleges and also four-year colleges and universities, both public and private. And Micron sits on that along with several industry associations, MACNY, local labor unions, just a number of organizations that all have interest in both the siting of the Micron project, the additional companies such as Menlo that are being located here in the region, as well as the supply chain, because there's really a lot of energy around what types of businesses are going to be needed to support the needs of that core industry that's being so invested in, particularly from the feds.
Thank you for that. I'm pleased to hear that you've got an opportunity there, and possibly that's something that will be available to help with these technology upgrades in some manner. They're all interrelated.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got Veronica and Shauna.
I think Annie had her hand up before me, actually.
Oh, okay. Maybe she was hiding behind you. Go ahead, Annie.
My question was asked, but I just want to, I'll just comment real quick. For folks who weren't able to go up to any of the informational sessions you had about the micro-credentials, I mean, it's just really helping to get folks into, you know, very particular requirements they need for very particular jobs, especially entry-level jobs. So thank you, and I also like hearing everybody say micro, nano, and stuff like that more. I come from Albany where a lot of this is already going on, and so for us to be able to take advantage of this technology in the companies. So thank you for all you're doing.
It's titillating to hear people talk tech, isn't it? Okay. Veronica.
Nice alliteration. I just wanted to express my appreciation. I taught at TC3 for a little bit for a couple of things you mentioned. I think I was there when the text message software was added, and that was very useful. For instance, when I fell ill right before I was supposed to teach a class and could text students, and maybe they'd actually receive it before they had to drive to campus, as opposed to just emailing. And also glad to hear about the lab upgrades. The physics lab was pretty ancient, and you know, we did some good physics with ancient equipment and a little bit of archaeology in the cabinets, and really excited about this.
The 70s were alive and well, yeah.
A multidisciplinary course. Yeah, okay. Shauna?
Yeah, I actually ran into George Wagner from Cortland, and he is serving his last term. He is retiring. But it sounds like the Cortland legislature is on board with the increase as well.
Yes,
that was
they've
good
been
news.
extremely supportive.
Great.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody else? Well, let me just extend a welcome to Sophia. Bill Talbot has forged a very productive and close relationship with this legislature, and I really look forward to continuing that with you. Thank you. Okay. Nice to see you, Amy.
Thank you, you too.
All right, the Tompkins County Public Library is next. And that is on page 5-39 of your book.
Oh, I was going to be at the table.
This is your time
You
to
may
shine.
not get me to leave.
Our big screen is taking up our spaces.
Okay, let me see if I can do
Presentation.
this. Is that better? Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Leslie Tabor, and I'm the director of the Tompkins County Public Library. I'm approaching my 10-month anniversary, so it's quite an honor to be here with you this evening. I would like to say thank you to my foundation board director, Carrie Barnes, who's here this evening, my newly promoted library assistant, Sasha Raffler, who is a new employee, to our passionate legislative liaison, Amanda Champion, to Shauna and Dan, who've been so supportive, and of course to Susan, whose shoes I try to fill every day. So I love talking about the library, so you may have to get the shepherd's hook out. I'm also happy to talk about what we feel about Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce, if we really want to take it in a different direction.
I think that falls under editorial
So just to give you a little bit more context, even though you're probably, hopefully, familiar with the library. As I mentioned, I'm the new director. I will reach a year this November 28th. We currently have 43 FTE, thanks to your generous support that brought us back up to pre-COVID levels in the last budget cycle. We have really focused on expanded digital services during my short time here. That has been very helpful during our HVAC closure. So I can't pretend that I could see the future, but it worked out very well for me. We currently have over 32,000 cardholders, and we continue to really focus on post-COVID stabilization. So our 3 over-target requests, which you're probably familiar with, the first is to sustain improved security services, the second is ongoing support for existing operations, and the third is with some succession planning. So I'd like to talk through each of these very briefly. So the first OTR is for a little over $59,000. Contextually, the library began contracting with Amherst Security in November of 2021. These are the best security guards I've ever worked with in a library setting, and I've worked across multiple states and multiple large library systems. The first thing they provide is a warm welcome. TCPL is all about equity, as Tompkins County is committed to that. We believe strongly that the library is for everyone, and so even if you're there in a more security capacity, that includes being welcoming, making eye contact, saying hello. They're also very well trained in de-escalation. So again, we want to keep everything enjoyable so that people can enjoy the library, and we don't want to unnecessarily escalate things. We understand that people may have a bad day, they may be confused, they may need a snack. So again, being welcoming, de-escalating, and also providing emergency response as needed. They're very good at their patrols. They're constantly all over the library. We're trying to intercept things before they become major issues. And then also providing staff support. So I think we all understand that laws and policies on paper are one thing, but they really come down to our ability to effectively sustain those and enforce them. So staff are dealing with lots of different things, and having a security guard there really offers that staff support so that people feel empowered to do their job, knowing that there's someone there to lean on in case something happens. I also want to point out that this is our #1 request. I believe in it very strongly. We recently had library security and staff actually save a life. There was a patron in distress in the women's public restroom. Several rounds of Narcan were administered, and I'm very happy to be able to tell you today that that patron was revived and is still alive, and that is in large part to the wonderful service of our security guards. They're not armed, which I really appreciate at this point. Again, thus far, the welcoming environment, the ability to de-escalate, and the empowerment of staff, I think, has really kept things normalized and balanced. But this is certainly a high priority for me as the director, and I do feel that it is essential for the library's operations. Our second over-target request is for ongoing operations. We have projected benefit increases. That would be New York State retirement, insurance premiums, contractual labor increases, and then, of course, inflationary pressures. I do think that our initial numbers for insurance, as we had discussions with the consortium, perhaps aren't as high as we initially projected, but still not nothing. So this would help us balance our budget and be able to meet those obligations, and also the benefits for our staff, which are our greatest asset. And I'd also like to acknowledge our board vice president, Mr. Don Trotter, has joined us. Don keeps me in line and asks the hard questions, so I appreciate you being here, Don. I did want to give you some context for numbers. I can give you as many of these as you want if you would like a little nap, or maybe you like the inside baseball. Library use does continue to be on the rise, and I think that's important to bring to the table as you're talking about considering us for OTRs. I have tried to give you an apples to apples snapshot in terms of last year to this year, but again, remembering that we're continuing to stabilize post-COVID. But I'm very proud that we have an increase of almost 30,000 visits from the first 6 months of 2022 to the first 6 months of 2023. I think that a lot of that is public confidence, but also the efforts of staff to make the library welcoming, appealing, applying the things that we learned in COVID, such as sometimes people want to use the self-check at Wegmans, and they also want to do that at the library, so let's make their hold self-serve. So very proud that our visits continue to increase. Circulation is on the rise. So again, the same time frame from 2022 to 2023, an increase of almost 75,000 items circulated. Circulation was a huge metric that impacted public libraries in COVID. We decreased by over 50% of our circ due to the pandemic. So if you really want to know the inside baseball, for me personally, I will know that we're really doing healthy and continuing to serve our community when we actually start beating our pre-COVID numbers, which I believe we will do by continuing to be relevant to the community. And then the last thing that I will mention, again, is that digital use. We've just heard about the importance of digital services for students. That's true for the nation. That's true for our county. We are seeing month by month almost a 300% increase in digital use. That's compared every single month compared to 2022 for a total of almost 76,000 for the same time period compared to last year. So I'm incredibly proud of that because it impacts equity issues like people being homebound. You can change the text size of an ebook. You can listen to an audiobook if you're visually impaired. So we're very, very committed to always neutralizing the digital divide. Our third request is for improved human resources. So again, succession planning, and not just because we all watched Succession, but our business manager, Michelle Benjamin, who will be embarrassed I said her name out loud, but I would like to give huge thanks to her, has been with the organization for like 30 years, and she does plan to retire in the spring. And so as the county and trends have changed over 30 years, so have the library's trends and needs. And so how do we support staff? How do we retain staff? How do we train and develop staff? We are a union shop, so how do we continue to support communication that way? And a huge part of that is our resources. We do partner with the county, but we do offer a lot of those human resources services on site. So that is a consideration that we had in terms of good fiduciary long-term planning. An inspirational quote for you about how the library has something for everyone, but we also understand that generations of library patrons come to us still for books and that type of knowledge, and that still holds really important value. And we're very proud that all of the agencies that you hear from in these budget hearings, we partner with, we support. We cannot be all things for all people. We cannot stand in all the gaps of society where there's never enough money or time or personnel, but we truly do our best to provide a place to connect people with resources, and we pride ourselves on that, and we love serving this community. So thank you for supporting TCPL. We acknowledge that you have no control over global financial situations or inflation rates or whatnot, but we truly could not do it without you. We appreciate and acknowledge that we receive the lion's share of our funding from you, and I can assure you that all of our happy people are committed to serving your same constituency every single day, and we're very, very proud to be your community library.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Leslie? Mike, Randy, Susan, okay.
Leslie, the over target for security, without that, you won't have security at all?
So when faced with the budget, we would have to make some decisions, as would any of the other departments or agencies. Do we find something else in the budget to do without? Do we have any sort of savings from a hiring freeze? Are there other options out there that we just haven't found yet? So we would, I think, do everything within our power to still have security service, but we would have some hard decisions to make.
I guess what I'm asking, is the over target your total security budget? Or is it part of your security budget?
I will have to check with Michelle on this. It is, if not the total, the majority, and it does include anticipated increases to that service contract.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have Randy, Susan, and Amanda.
So do you currently have security at all times you're open?
Yes, we absolutely do. So we have 6-day service, and anytime the library is open, security is present.
And you were mentioning visitors, how many. Do you track where those visitors are from in the county?
So that's a great question. We don't track door count numbers. That's just a black and white, 100,000 people came in, 100,000 people came in the next day. The way that we can see where visitors come from is through our card holder signups. So we know if you are in Tompkins County, we know if your home library is one of the 5 Tompkins County libraries. We also have an option for non-resident, so perhaps you're a temporary scholar from one of the universities, but you're here for 6 months and you want a library card. So the majority of our card holders, and I know I have that data I can email to you later, are from within Tompkins County. There is a percentage that are from outside, but the majority is Tompkins County.
The only reason I mention it is because a few people, they just don't like coming downtown. So they do, in Enfield, people don't have a library, so
Correct.
that's a big deal for them. And also, I remember looking at your financials from 2022, but I know you have a fund balance. Would you have to use some of your fund balance?
Yes. Okay. Our goal, of course, is a balanced budget. So, and I know that we've had to go into the fund balance for things like COVID and keeping our doors open then. So absolutely, that would be part of the conversation.
Thank you.
How much is that fund balance, by the way?
Would have to follow up. I'm sorry. I'm a librarian. Don't you do the math?
Not an accountant. Yeah, okay. I got it. Okay. Susan.
I just wanted to ask the HR position, would that be in addition to
replacing the business manager?
Yes, so that we would still have the business manager position, and this would be HR support.
Okay. Anything else, Susan? All right, I have Amanda, I have Shauna, and is that a hand, Greg?
It was a follow-up to Susan's question.
Okay, well, then I'll let you cut in line.
Thanks. Sorry, I just, it's an additional position, or is it consulting support or strategic support, that 87,000 for improved human resources?
It is an additional position.
Okay, sorry, this just wasn't clear.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
a great question.
Okay, Amanda.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions as well. I just wanted to remind my colleagues that last year, Legislator Mezzi was the one who pulled the security funding from the budget. And it was, up until last year, it has been something that we have funded for the library. And I believe your reasoning was that we were hoping that the city of Ithaca would get it together with their police department to provide additional security in the downtown area. I'm pretty sure that hasn't happened. So my editorial comment for the night would be that I would hope that we would go back to providing this funding for the security.
Point of clarity, that didn't pass, right?
Yeah, we didn't pay, we paid it's always been a target thing that we've paid, and we pulled it to one time. So going forward, we won't be paying for their security unless we add this back in.
But this is being asked for as an OTR, not as an addition to Target.
I think they just want the money, right? Regardless.
Oh, no, I understand that. I just want to
Whether it's, yeah.
I just want to make it clear so nobody misunderstands where we are.
I also made a number of other recommendations regarding the library, so just, that wasn't the only one.
Deborah, this is Target.
Target.
Oh, this is Target.
Yeah, would, I think, be putting it back into Target,
Okay.
right?
Yes, so
Yeah.
I think there were things that preceded my time here, and it became a one-time ask, so we're back as a one-time, but we would be delighted for it to be a part of our permanent fiscal target. So thank you for those questions.
It is, your request is for permanent.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
And then, can you remind us if you're getting money from the city of Ithaca?
So we have submitted our official letters to both the city and the town for $15,000 each. That funding is targeted for Sunday service. So we have 7-day service, 9 Sundays in the spring and 9 Sundays in the fall. And I believe that we have submitted those but not received confirmation.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, is that everything?
Yeah.
All right, I've got Shauna and then I have Lee.
That was my question about the city and town.
Okay. Let's hope our friends at the city are listening.
We've met, for context, we've met and had a wonderful meeting with the mayor, and we also attended a town study session. So I'm sure they're thinking about budget constraints as well, but our conversations have been really positive, and they've been very strong partners thus far.
Thank you. I've got Lee and then Greg.
Just kind of a follow-up to the back and forth there with Amanda and Greg. The other offshoots, I guess, last year was we were going to have county administration and the sheriff's office give us some perspective on downtown security on all the facilities, because at the same time we were, or about the same time we were looking at social services. So I'm not asking for any of that tonight, but in anticipation of there being some motions put forward in the next few weeks, we may want to dust that topic off and have a talk about security downtown, because obviously things are not improving.
Well, they were a master of understatement there, Mr. Shurtleff. Greg.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and watch the recording, and that's what's so great about being in a public meeting. I believe my thought process at the time was not to pull security, but to move it from target to one-time funding because of the continuing maintenance of effort that has to take place with our library funding. And somebody who knows this better than I maybe correct me, but whatever we put into target, we need to continue year after year after year after year after year regardless if the environment or circumstances or situations change. So something like security, in my mind, addressing a more immediate need, not understanding what the local climate was going to look like, the thought process, not committing those funds in perpetuity to live on forever and ever, but looking at, okay, each year, what makes the most sense? Do they need more security? Do they need less security? What does the needs of security change? Does the cost of security change? So that was my thought process, not completely eliminating security. Big fan of the library, big fan of the work that you do. We do have some tough economic decisions to make, and we have to ask the tough questions, and if we're not willing to have them out loud, I just want you to know it doesn't mean that people aren't fans of the work that you do or support the work that you do. It's just weighing where's the priority within the county with the funds that we have available. So, and being cautious of the fact that anytime we commit target funds, for me personally, those funds are committed forever, essentially, at a certain percentage, right? Like 90% or something, or
That effect, it's a
something to that
maintenance
effect.
of effort. Yeah.
Okay, we're straying.
I didn't bring up the original comment. I'm just clarifying that my name was invoked. So thank you for straying us back.
Okay, so I have Veronica and then Mike Lane.
Jumping to a different stray, I don't remember the security at the library before the last year or so, but the people I see there are, at least like, they give the warm greetings and things, and like, look, it's not the same as just having more IPD officers. So I heard that conflated, but I don't think it should be.
All right, well, we obviously we will be having a debate about this when we get to our debating meetings. So, Mike.
To Greg's point, I just wanted to point out that it is possible to change a target budget.
Okay, are we done with the library? It appears that we are. Thank you, Leslie. I appreciated your presentation, and haven't met you up to now, but it's nice to meet you.
We went over the 2 slides. I hope that's okay.
That's fine. Okay. Whole health.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I will share my screen here shortly. 2 things I need to do before that. One, I have to wave and say hi to my daughter Lily, who's watching on television. She says I'm famous because I'm on television, so we want to feed into that as much as possible.
Hello, Lily.
And then second, I am a health commissioner, not a mathematician, just like our librarian, so I evoke that. But I did bring Jeremy Porter, who is our fiscal administrator for the department, so he can help rescue me if I get into trouble. And with that, I will share my screen.
Okay, and I neglected to tell you that this is on 4-206 of your books.
I'll know who we are. So we have actually 5 OTRs, 4 of which are included in the county administrator's budget. The first one is for our care team, which are the alternative response that includes a licensed clinical therapist partnering with a law enforcement officer. We're happy. This is a continuation of funding for that. We're happy to say that our first team is now operational and has been for about a month. And anecdotally, the successes have been amazing to hear about. And so we're looking forward to being able to provide you data that backs up those stories. We're still actively looking for and recruiting for the second licensed clinical therapist. I think we're close to having that person identified. And then they will be working with IPD to support coverage in the city with the second team. So the OTR is for 2 licensed clinical therapists to partner with law enforcement for an alternative response in the community. Am I going through all 5, or are we questioning as we go?
We can take questions as we go. Does anyone have a question about this one? Shauna.
Yeah, I guess my question is, since we just started this program, we're in year 1 of a 3-year, is that right?
We are in year one, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is this related to reimagining public safety or an offshoot of it?
Yes, it kind of originally grew out of our mobile crisis team being overwhelmed and needing an alternative for that, but it quickly evolved into partnering with the sheriff and our community justice center as part of the public safety reform.
Thanks, Frank.
Okay, then the second OTR is the one that is not funded, and this is for a rural outreach worker to be contracted with Family and Children Services. Our Deputy Commissioner, Harmony Ayers-Friedlander, worked with leadership at Family and Children's and were able to secure a one-year grant to expand the community outreach worker to the rural parts of the county. Unfortunately, that grant was 1 year and it's now coming to an end. And so we're looking for funding to continue that program. We imagine this, again, as a component of public safety reform. It is what we're hoping would be an unarmed response to issues in the community. We do expect that they will work very closely with our care team and the Sheriff's Department to figure out how to, successfully implement that process. But they've stood the program up. There was some initial funding. They have a van that was purchased with the original grant funding. But really what we're talking about now is the staffing and being able to continue to cover that. So that is the one OTR in here that is not currently in the county administrator's budget.
Okay, any questions? Dan?
In the description, there's something about rural hotspots. Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, so whenever we have outreach workers, we do look at data that we have available to us about perhaps where certain calls are being made into the 911 center for types of response, areas where we've seen, perhaps we've seen overdoses occurring in larger numbers than is normal. It's really just terminology to describe places where the data tells us there's more need and that we should be targeting our resources there.
Are they individual homes or neighborhoods or a business, a shopping center? Like what types of things are hotspots?
I think it could be any of those things except probably an individual home, right? I think if there are places where folks in need are congregating, that's where we want to be, right? Where where we want to take the services to people. So we're really looking for where they are and trying to meet them where they are. So the short answer is any and all of those, but I can't imagine it would be somebody's home.
Thank you.
Shauna?
Yeah, so just to confirm, this is everything outside of the city of Ithaca?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have Veronica and Mike.
Thanks. 2 questions. Maybe I missed it. It says in the document this was a multi-year request. How many years?
I believe it was 3.
Okay.
It's staffing. So whenever we're talking about staffing, it's challenging if we only have 1 year's worth of funding kind of committed for it.
Totally makes sense. And then can you explain the relationship between Family and Children Services and the Department of Whole Health?
Sure.
As relates to this program, at least, maybe?
Yeah, so they're a community partner, and they already operate the community outreach worker program that the county funds in cooperation with the city to cover the downtown area. And so, whenever we're looking to place these types of activities, it makes sense to create teams of people that can support each other in those agencies. So essentially, we would contract the dollars to Family and Children's, and they would operate the program.
Okay, Mike?
Veronica asked my question.
Randy?
It's a lot to understand here with your health department, so I appreciate all the information. And it looks like about 2/3 of the budget you get revenue from in some way.
Are you talking about the
entire budget?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah,
So you and I have talked about help in schools in having therapists go into those schools And I know you've been working hard to fund, it's currently funded for 2 positions, I believe, that are unfilled. How many total positions are there now in the school system?
Oh, that's a good question. So the 2, we did just fill those 2 positions I was talking to you about, and Jeremy tells me we have a total of 6 children and youth folks that go into the schools.
How much of that is an expense? I mean, is any of that reimbursed?
Yes. So whenever they're in the school, it's actually a satellite clinic of our clinic, and they are billable services. So the majority of the cost is covered. It's hard to say it's 100% because the way of the monies move within our budget, we have overhead that we have to pay for. So yes, they may be able to pay for the bulk of their salary in fringe, but there's also a component of overhead that they have to generate for too. So there is a little bit of county contribution that supports each of those positions, but the vast majority of it is revenue.
So if the schools said they needed 10 people, it wouldn't cost the county as much money?
It would cost a little bit, but it would be a small proportion of the total cost of those positions. The bigger challenge that we have would be filling those positions.
Right, yeah, I understand that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Annie and Greg.
So looking at, I'm going to be a little picky here. Just looking through the expense, you have the amount for salaries, direct to clients, supplies, direct to clients, $8,000. Just wondering what some of these things for. $3,000, $3,500 for satellite services, rent, $16,000, overhead, those type of things.
I would have to stop sharing so I can look at the budget to understand what you're doing. Oh, Lisa can show me. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. And this is for the rural outreach. So it's essentially overhead, right? Anytime you have positions, there's additional costs that go along with those positions. And that is what Family and Children has provided us as their total cost in order to administer the program.
So these are their numbers. All these are their numbers.
Correct.
What's that? Go ahead.
Sorry, are you referring to just the overhead line at the bottom or everything other than the salary and benefits?
So everything here was supplied to us by Family and Children's as what they would expect the program to cost them. So each of those line items is related to the cost of having those 2 positions, the travel associated with it, cell phone service, right? I think we know what that is. Rent, if they're going to provide space for those individuals, they're going to charge a contract rent for it. So it's really the expenditures that they expect to occur by managing the program.
So they are managing the program now? And
They are, correct, under a different grant that's going to end.
So that's why they're asking for the same amount?
This is what they presented to us when we
Okay.
asked them for a proposal to continue the program.
Yeah, for me, it would be nice to know, like, what, 8,000 for supplies to client. I mean, I just don't know much about the program, and so rent is different than overhead, I guess, yeah. I guess I'm just not understanding all the numbers.
And supplies to client is like bus passes, cab rides home, things that clients would need to get through the night or whatever need that they have. We do the same thing with LEAD. There are things that, folks need to help them get through a day or two. So there's things like that.
Also, they've got like blankets, socks, snacks, things. There's a I've been to the office of this program once, and there's a cabinet full of all that stuff that's for clients.
And we can certainly ask them for some additional information on those line items.
Okay, but if this sounds, I trust my colleagues that know more about the program than I do.
Okay. I've got Greg, Shauna, and Randy.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. The care team is a year two of a 2-year OTR. Do you know what level was it funded last year? Do you know? The same amount?
Yeah, it's close. It's essentially the same program. We may have added a little bit of expense in because we discovered that there would be some additional expense, but the vast majority of it is staffing.
And sorry, this is up and running currently?
Correct. One of the teams has been operational for about a month. Yep.
Got it. Okay. And do you have any sort of thoughts on or numbers on how many situations they've been to or how they've?
We're working on getting that data. We have a strong data plan with the Sheriff's Department to collect that stuff, but we're new into it, so I don't really have that at my fingertips other than anecdotes at this point.
Okay. And the majority of the funding for this OTR as it relates to your departments is with the clinical therapist?
Licensed clinical therapist, yep.
Okay. Great, thanks. Just wanted some clarity on that one.
Okay, Shauna.
Yeah, I know that there have been some staffing issues with Family and Children's, and I was wondering, whenever we started this with them a year ago, was there actually an RFP requesting agencies to come forward to provide the services?
No, there was not. There was communication with the Office of Mental Health, which had funding available, and they, as they are these days, are looking for rapid response. And because we already had a partner that was doing similar work within the city, it seemed to make sense to us to expand that versus trying to rebuild and have two different agencies doing the same thing, one in the city, one in the county. So that was our approach. But to answer your question, no, there was not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this kind of goes around to like the equity and allowing other agencies to apply for county services and county funds. I think we need to be really consistent about if we have a service that we need, that we open it up, because I know that there are 3 or 4 other agencies that provide similar services. And I am concerned because Family and Children's has not been consistent over the past year with their staffing. So.
Hey, Randy.
Yes, Frank, my question's on the Ithaca Youth Bureau. What are they working on for the health department?
Say again?
What does the Ithaca Youth Bureau do with the health department? What are they?
Are you now in the budget again, Randy?
I am in the budget,
Okay.
yeah, I'm just looking at.
Sorry.
In the budget or in the weeds?
What? I can't look at that and share the screen, so I gotta look
That's
at
okay.
this.
It's on page 198.
How much is it, Randy?
$130,000.
For the Ithaca Youth Bureau?
What it says.
And is it from the Public Health Division of Whole Health?
I'm looking at yeah, I think I'm in the right.
It's a $31 million budget, so there's some lines that I don't know.
Yeah, it's in the middle, it's in 198, in my book.
It's in the mental health division budget.
Oh, it's one of the contracts? Did we contract?
You can get back to me on that.
Why don't you come up and take a seat or?
We'll get, Randy, we can get you that answer. We do contract with many agencies. Some of it is pass-through monies from the state, but I can certainly get you the answer to what we contract that for.
Okay, I was just curious because I know in speaking to them, they do the Big Brother, Big Sister program, and I don't know if it has anything to do with this or not. And they have 50 kids who are currently being serviced, and they have 80 people on the waiting list. To give you an idea of how, and that means over a year waiting list. So I'll share that.
Shauna?
So I did just want to let my colleagues know that Dan Klein and I will be bringing forward an amendment to help with our early intervention services, the wait list for kids that need early intervention, let's hear speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy, special instruction, and social work. The wait list is really long, and I feel like as a county, we need to look at some different options. So I did want to give my colleagues the heads up that we are going to bring forward an amendment for that over the next few days.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Frank?
All right. The third OTR, which is included, is the third year of a 3-year funding commitment to the Alcohol and Drug Council to support the open access startup up at Trip Emmer Road. Each year, the funding decreased, and so we're down to $150,000 for this year, and it would be the third year of that funding.
Travis?
What is that money going to?
So there are services that are operational up there. They do have the open access component where folks can come in. What isn't operational yet is the medical detox side of things. So that actually is the revenue generating side of things. So this was originally intended to help them kind of stand up the whole thing to fill in some gaps. But in the absence of being able to get fully opened, it just helps sustain them, the open access component of their work.
Anybody else? Okay, Frank, go ahead.
The fourth OTR here, this was actually a legislature OTR last year for Reach Medical. It is to support their outreach work that they do. They've created a medical outreach team that includes a nurse, and they were looking for funding to help support that. I will say it was a heavy lift to kind of navigate that because we as a department are not able to contract with someone for services that are billable, and medical services can be billable, whether it be my Medicaid. For the folks that they're serving, it would be Medicaid, or they may be uninsured. So we did a lot of work with Reach. I think we fine-tuned a bit what it is we can actually pay for, and did ultimately get a contract signed that both us and the county admin and finance felt comfortable being able to pay. And so this is year 2 of that continued funding for Reach Medical.
Any questions? Okay, go ahead, Frank.
All right. And then the last one is vehicle leases, and I'm going to let Lisa handle that one.
So while we have a capital program that now encompasses all of the fleet vehicles, there are 2 departments, Whole Health being one and Department of Social Services being another, that where we can draw down state funds to reimburse us for the lease purchases, but the vehicle purchases or vehicle leases, but those have to take place from the originating department. They can't come through the capital program itself. It comes through either Whole Health or Department of Social Services. Social Services has it within their target to fund the fleet program. Whole Health does not. So unless we put an amount in their target, we are going to be seeing an over target, one-time over target requests each year to support the fleet vehicles, so that they can draw down that state reimbursement. I hope that makes sense.
So does this go into Target, or is it an OTR?
This is a one-time, this is in the form of a one-time over target request. It's not in Target.
Okay, so explain, do we get then reimbursed for this money?
Yes.
So.
Well,
Some of it.
we get partial reimbursement.
So is the $92,181 net of the reimbursement, or is that the gross amount?
So, yeah. 92,181 is the cost of the vehicle, and 16,593 is the revenue that would.
Okay, so the net figure is the 75,588. Okay.
It is different on this page, on the OTR page. It says public health work, 16,000, and then vehicles, 92,000.
Right, it's revenue and expenses. The 40, yeah, and this is a deficiency in the report itself, yeah. But it's the net of those two. It's 92,181 minus 16,593, which gets you 75,588.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Mike Sigler and then Mike Lane.
I guess I have like 3 questions.
Okay, go for it.
So if that 75 is one-time money, right? We'll just have to do this again next year, right? Because you're saying that we have to do it every year. Number 2, when we get reimbursed, does the money go to whole health or does it come back to the general fund?
Back to the fleet, it's going back to the fleet program.
Whole county.
Right.
Yes.
How many cars does this cover? I mean, if this is a,
10.
what?
10. It's in the book says 10 vehicles.
Covers, okay, so that makes sense then, as a lease. I just heard 92,000 for a car or something.
It's a very expensive car.
Well, it's 10 cars, right?
Yes, it is.
And they are all either electric or plug-in at this point. We only have one fully gas vehicle left.
There's a car that's $92,000?
It's a DeLorean.
None of
It's
ours
just a
are.
joke, Mike.
Okay.
There's 10 vehicles.
There might be, I don't know.
Okay. Is that all your questions?
That was the 3 questions.
Okay, great. So I have Mike Lane and then Greg.
I'll try to figure this out in my head, but I'll let it go.
Okay. Greg?
So this one-time 75,000, if that money is getting reimbursed to some extent, wouldn't that number that we need to put up there every year get lower because we've had, does that question make sense? I'm trying to understand the mechanics of this. We pay one time over target and then we get reimbursed back. And then we do it again. And then at some point, if we do it the first time, shouldn't the money that we get reimbursed stay in an account to cover that next year so we don't have to do an OTR and that just keeps getting replenished?
Yeah, we may not be, when I said you'll see this annually, it might not be that amount. It depends upon the
vehicles.
the replacement schedule. And the funding that we receive back goes into the capital program to replenish so that you won't see as much per year.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Mike?
So is this your department purchasing or leasing these vehicles, or is it going through this contractor that we have dealt with, or we are about to deal with?
It's going through Enterprise Fleet Management.
Okay.
But it has to come from Whole Health or DSS, otherwise we don't get the reimbursement. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Frank. All right. Any last-minute questions, concerns, black market, editorial comments? Veronica?
Thank you. I have a concern about the budget book, or maybe I'm lost. I feel like the whole health, public health division budget on the online book and the whole health, mental health division somehow collectively don't have all of the, what do you call the 4-number account codes? Functional units? Yeah, they don't have all the functional units that I see in the PDF copy. And there's 3 pages. Where's the 3rd page? I thought about this because I was looking for the Ithaca Youth Bureau thing Randy asked about, and I couldn't find it. And I still can't find it.
If you go to the, I'm sorry, if you go to the bottom of the, oh, wait. Thank you. Yeah, there are 3 pages. If you, in the email I sent you earlier today, all 3 pages are there. And this will be corrected in just,
Okay. Thank you.
I apologize for that.
That email was super helpful, so thank you.
Yes, it was.
For doing that work. That was really, really
Oh,
helpful.
good.
Okay.
And see, I thought I knew where everything was and wasn't looking at the email, but
you guys have been,
I should have.
you guys have been killing it. This is great.
All right, I guess this is redundant since everybody's already acting like we are done, but we are done. We'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you.
Norma, can I ask you something?